Guterres pointed to the founding document of the United Nations, its charter, in which tools to settle grievances can be found, including mediation, judicial settlement or arbitration, among others, as he pointed to Africa as an example.
We must pay tribute to the wisdom of African leaders and follow their example. Colonial powers, including my own country, divided the continent of Africa with the stroke of a pen, as they did in other parts of the world. But post-independence leaders understood that trying to change borders would open a Pandora's box of bloodshed and feed even greater grievances. In my experience, it's extremely difficult for people to agree on the past. What is more important and less difficult is to help them agree on the future. And to agree on the future, international law and the principles set out in the UN Charter, including respect for territorial integrity and the political independence of states, are fundamental. This is why the Russian invasion of Ukraine is such a dangerous precedent.
He told the Council that Ukrainians are suffering appallingly from the war inflicted upon them, with estimates that over 10,000 civilians have been killed, although that figure is likely much higher. Among soldiers killed or injured on both sides, hundreds of thousands, while he pointed to an independent international commission of inquiry on Ukraine that reported civilians and prisoners tortured and more than 200 cases of sexual violence, mostly at the hands of Russian forces.
Attacks against humanitarians and civilian infrastructure must stop.
Guterres called for all perpetrators to be held to account.
Many Ukrainians are experiencing the living nightmare of losing their children. All children that have been deported must be reunited with their families. Nearly 4 million Ukrainians have been internally displaced, including almost 1 million children. And over 14.5 million people inside the country need humanitarian assistance. Humanitarian aid programs carried out by the United Nations and our partners, particularly our Ukrainian partners, reached 11 million people last year. That included providing life-saving food, water, healthcare and shelter, as well as working to remove the deadly explosives that litter the Ukrainian landscape.
He further conceded that the war was also harming the Russian population, with thousands of young Russians killed at the front, while civilians affected by Ukrainian strikes on Russian cities were also suffering.
The danger of the conflict escalating and expanding is very real, and around the world, the war is deepening geopolitical divides. It is fanning regional instability and shrinking the space available to address other urgent global issues, and it is undermining the shared norms and values that make us all safer. The conflict accelerated a surge in food prices, economic shocks, and a global cost of living crisis, hitting developing countries still recovering from COVID-19 the hardest. In addition, the prospect of this war resulting in nuclear accident chills spines around the world. Both sides to the conflict must take all possible measures to prevent that from happening at all nuclear sites across the country.
The UN chief told the meeting that disregarding the UN Charter was at the root of the problem, and that by again respecting it was where solutions were to be found. Sherman Bryceby's SABC News, New York.